made this rather remarkable speech where you talked about the destiny of Europe and America always being intertwined. You talked about an alliance which has stretched all the way culturally from Michelangelo to the Rolling Stones, a first, I suspect, for a Secretary of State, but a culture that has bled and died together. But the very common theme of your speech was the need to share the burden, the need for Europe and America to do things together, which was slightly different from the Vice President last year. Were you kind of offering a carrot where perhaps he was offering a stick?
I think it's the same message. I think what the Vice President said last year very clearly was that Europe had made a series of decisions internally that were threatening to the alliance and ultimately to themselves, not because we hate Europe or we don't like Europeans, but because what is it that we fight for? What is it that binds us together? And ultimately, it's the fact that we are both heirs to the same civilization. And it's a great civilization. And it's one we should be proud of. It's one that's contributed extraordinarily to the world. And it's one, frankly, upon which America is built. From our language to our system of government, to our laws, to the food we eat, to the name of our cities and towns, all of it deeply linked to this Western civilization and culture that we should be proud of, and it's worth defending. And ultimately, that's the point. The point is that people don't fight and die for abstract ideas. They are willing to fight and defend who they are and what matters and is important to them. And that was the foundation he laid last year in his speech, and we add on into this year to explain to people that when we come off as urgent or even critical about decisions that Europe has failed to make or made, it is because we care. It is because we understand that ultimately our own fate will be intertwined with what happens with Europe. We want Europe to survive. We want Europe to prosper because we're interconnected in so many different ways, and because our alliance is so critical. But it has to be an alliance of allies that are capable and willing to fight for who they are and what's important.
Do you see a parallel? You seem to see a parallel between the Cold War, which I think I would argue that the America beat the Soviet Union because it had a...
No, it's actually, we do share a lot of values with the Europeans, I guess, but not freedom of speech. And not the Second Amendment. I mean, Lord knows we always butt heads over that. But when it comes to freedom of speech and the Second Amendment, I mean, those are pretty foundational. So I don't know. I would have to push back on Rubio about that. Like, I don't know about that. I wish we could say we did share value with these guys, but not really. I mean, we're capitalists, and a lot of these guys like have a socialist structure to their economy. I mean, bro, we believe in freedom of speech. They don't. We believe in the right to bear arms. They don't. So, I mean, there's a big difference there. Oh, I mean, and shout out to this guy, though. He's like, are you crazy? The only reason I'm responding because you actually pay, so I'm respecting that. He's like, are you crazy? Trump-owned administration admitted that tariffs added no. Trump administration did not admit that, and I would love for you to source that for me. Okay, dog, please. Because no, Trump administration did not admit that at all whatsoever. Like, bro, come on now. Come on. You got to at least actually be able to source that. Trump-owned administration.
Common idea, and it had allies on its side. You're now in a struggle with China. As people say, you've often been a hawk on that subject.
And dog, are you serious? 3 new deals? Do I really got to sit there and explain to you all the trade deals that we have? Because it's more than 3. I just want to let you know. It's more than 3. So you're obviously uninformed. Then you have TDS, and that's perfectly fine. You can sit there and hate Trump, but at least get your facts straight.
You're in a struggle with China. Do you think you absolutely need Europe to be able to...
Yeah, I would say 2 things. The first, the mentions of the Cold War to remind people of everything we've achieved together in the past, in times when there was doubt. I mean, it's hard to imagine today, but there were those who believed in the 60s and 70s even that at a minimum we had reached a stalemate, and worse, that perhaps Soviet expansion was inevitable and that we needed to come to accept it. There were voices that actually argued this. And so it's reminding people of what we've done together in the past, but it's also a reminder that at the end of that era, when we won the Cold War, there was this euphoria that led us to make some terrible decisions that have now left us vulnerable and deindustrialized the West. It left us increasingly dependent on others, including China, for our critical supplies, and that needs to be reversed in order to safeguard us. And so I do think, yes, it would be ideal to have a Western supply chain that is free from extortion from anyone. Leave aside China, anybody else. We should never have to. We should never be in a situation where our alliance and our respective countries are vulnerable to extortion or blackmail because
I'm sorry, but hold on now, Rubio, bro, they be walking into the extortion. I mean, bro, do you see how China do these African countries with the 99-year lease and owning their infrastructure and all that wild stuff? And they're doing it in South America. A lot of these countries walk into it. A lot of these European countries rush to work with China, and they know how they be destroying people's infrastructure. They know how they be destroying people's steel market by flooding their markets with watered down steel. They know this. And some of them like literally walk into the extortion. I mean, look at Canada. They're literally walking into the extortion as we speak by signing a trade deal with China. I can't feel bad for people like that.
Controls 99% of something that's critical to national life. So I think we do have a vested interest in that regard. Today is different than yesterday, but it has parallels, not in that China's the new Soviet Union, but that in our future, collectively, we'll be stronger if we work on these things together.
Do you worry from that perspective, the fact that, especially in the...
But dog, that's great and all and nice. I'm glad you're a successful person. Congratulations. But you owning 3 companies that do imports. Now, let me tell you what honestly matters. You know about competition, right? Because I think you're a bit blinded by the field that you're in. So not everybody could probably drive up their price like you do to cost, because you're probably in an industry that has low competition, aka you can afford to drive up your price because you don't got too much competition to compete with. I mean, it's the blessings of being in an oligopoly or even a monopoly. Is because the fact you have less competition, you have better price control. In a more saturated market, new costs doesn't mean you could just drive up your price, because if the other competitor finds a way to keep their price low and still make a profit, they'll destroy you when it comes to market capital. So yeah, you saying that don't mean anything, because you can't speak for all industries. And you should know this as a business owner.
Recent period, various sort of allies. Mark Carney has just been to Beijing. Starmer has just been to Beijing. Merz is about to go there. Do you worry that they're beginning to drift off too much in that direction?
No, I think nation states need to interact with one another. Just because remember, I serve under a president that's willing to meet with anybody.
Yes.
I mean, to be frank, I'm pretty confident in saying that if the Ayatollah said tomorrow he wanted to meet with President Trump, the president would meet him, not because he agrees with the Ayatollah, but because he thinks that's the way you solve problems in the world, and he doesn't view meeting someone as a concession. Likewise, the president intends to travel to Beijing and has already met once with President Xi. And in this very forum yesterday, I met with my counterpart, the foreign minister of China. So we expect nation states to interact with one another. In the end, we expect nation states to act in their national interest. I don't think that is that in no way runs counter to our desire to work together on things that we share in common or threats we face in common. But I don't think visiting Beijing or meeting with the Chinese is, on the contrary, I think it would be irresponsible for great powers not to have relationships and talk through things, and to the extent possible, avoid unnecessary conflict. But there will be areas we'll never agree on, and those are the areas that I hope we can work together on.
So you think the rupture that many people have spoken about is illusory? That hasn't happened yet?
There's no, I mean, even as I speak to you now, there are U.S. troops deployed here on this continent on behalf of NATO. There are still all kinds of cooperation that go on at every level, from intelligence to commercial and economic. The links remain. I think there is a readjustment that's happening, because I think we have to understand that we want to reinvigorate. This alliance has to look different because the world looks different. This alliance has to be about different things than it's been in the past, because the challenges of the 21st century are different than the challenges of the 20th. So,
oh God, do me a favor and double tap that screen, like the video, guys. Let's get more people in the conversation by double tapping that screen.
the world has changed and the alliance has to change. But the fundamental thing that has to change is we have to remind ourselves of why it is we have an alliance in the first place. This is not just a military arrangement. This is not just some commercial arrangement. It is what holds us together in the first place as an alliance, is our shared civilizational values. The fact that we are all heirs to a common civilization, and one we should be very proud of. And only after we recognize that and make that the core of why it is we're allies in the first place, can we then build out all the mechanics of that alliance. And then everything else we do together makes more sense.
The place where that's being most obviously tested at the moment is Ukraine. You see all these numbers from the front where the Ukrainians do seem to be doing better in terms of what's happening to the Russians. Do you think Ukraine, or do you think Russia is still winning that?
Hey, and shout out to my man Chad. He says early stream. Appreciate the support. Oh yeah, shout out to Chad, and of course our homeboy Goose. Like, I know we disagree, but hey, it is what it is. And I heard what you said, dog, about, oh, I'm in furniture, and I'm like, doesn't that kind of lean in more into my point? Because I mean, well, how much furniture companies, like the big ones, are there truly? Like, how much big manufacturing and furniture are there truly? And maybe you can tell me that, and you could tell me, is that a saturated market? I personally don't know. But like I spoke to you, I said you can't speak for every market in every industry because each one is different. Each one has a different amount or a different number of competitors to which they can, I say, gauge their price on, or which they put their price on. Well, decide their price on. Sorry. Oh, and Chad, you know what? I mean, I get what you're saying. You're like, come on, bro. Said Canada. Well, we're talking about them being the 51st state, how they need us for this and that. And it kind of seems like we're disrespecting Canada. And you're right, bro. You're right, because they've been disrespecting us in trade. You're right. And, you know, is it okay to do this tit for tat? I mean, honestly, that's up to you. I'll leave that to your personal opinion. But in terms of protecting our personal interests, then working with China while being our next door neighbor, I don't think that's the best thing to do, especially since we just kidnapped or basically extracted an entire president or dictator, or however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, a man, out of Venezuela for basically doing the same thing. Let's not forget, we did that.
Where do you place it militarily?
I think that's a difficult war to say anyone is winning. The Russians are losing 7,000 to 8,000 soldiers a week. Yes. Not wounded, dead. Ukraine has suffered extraordinary damage, including, overnight, and again, to its energy infrastructure, and it will take billions of dollars and years to rebuild that country. So I don't think anyone can claim to be winning it. I think that both sides are suffering tremendous damage, and we'd like to see the war come to an end. It's a senseless war. In our view, the president believes that very deeply. He believes the war would have never happened had he been president at the time. So we're doing two things. So obviously we continue. Look, we don't provide arms to.
Nah, Putin's winning it. Putin's winning, because every time Zelensky sits down for negotiations, they're always talking about, well, concessions. They don't never talk like that to Putin. Why? Because Putin is winning the war. I mean, we can't ask you to concede nothing if you're winning. Excuse me. So all these people who still think Ukraine got a fighting chance, I'm sorry, but the hype is over. It's done. They're losing. And you guys sitting here over here trying to hold hope for them. I mean, God bless your heart, but it's not happening for them, sadly.
Russia. We provide arms to Ukraine. We don't sanction Ukraine, we sanction Russia. But at the same time, we find ourselves in a unique position of serving as probably the only nation on earth that can bring the two sides to discuss the potential for ending this war on negotiated terms. And it's an obligation we won't walk away from, because we think it's a very unique one to have. It may not come to fruition, unfortunately. I hope it does. And I think there are days when I feel more optimistic about it than others. But we're going to keep trying, because that is, in the end, this war will not be solved militarily. It will be, in the end, it will come to a negotiated settlement. We'd like to see that happen as soon as possible.
I'm worried that if Ukraine loses the war, it's going to be a disaster for the transatlantic relationship, because Americans will say the Europeans didn't provide enough arms.
No, we're not.
Europeans
I wouldn't say that.
Look and remember.
Honestly, I would not say that. I think it'd be pretty unfair to say, oh, well, Europe didn't provide enough arms. It's like, no. I mean, we all was trying for Ukraine. We all sent them money. We all sent them missiles and weapons. Shoot, I mean, NATO even put some troops on the ground for these guys. So, nobody's going to say that. We're just going to say that, all right, we bit more than we could chew. We bit off more than we can chew when it came to Russia, and we're kind of paying for it. It is what it is. Well, the Ukrainian people are paying for it. We're paying for it out of our pockets. They're paying for it with their lives, which is kind of effed up.
But the meeting, the White House and Zelensky and Trump, and they will
play that would ignore reality. Look, Ukraine, first of all, they deserve a lot of credit. They fought very bravely. They've received extraordinary amount of support from the United States to the tune of billions of dollars that pre-exist the war. In fact, Ukraine probably wouldn't have survived the early days of the war had it not been for American aid that came to them even before the war had started, with the Javelin missiles that disabled the tank formations. I wasn't
saying it was fair. I was just saying there's a possibility. You have to deal with perceptions.
No, but I'm not worried about that, because I can tell you that I think history will understand it. But I don't think the war is going to end in a traditional loss in the way people think. I don't think it's possible for Russia to even achieve whatever initial objectives they had at the beginning of this war. I think now it's largely narrowed down to their desire to take 20% of Donetsk that they don't currently possess. And that's hard. It's a hard concession for Ukraine to make for obvious reasons, both from a tactical standpoint and.
Guys, let's make sure you double tap that screen, like the video, guys. Let's get more people on the conversation by double tapping that screen. And he's right. He's right. They've already lost the nets. I mean, bro, be honest with you, they only got 10% of it. And this is what we're actually asking them to concede. It's like, look, concede the next region, and you might have to concede more, but maybe you can get away with, keeping some of these little pieces of parts of land that you guys got. if you give up all of the nets. And it doesn't seem like the Ukrainian parliament's going for that. We'll see, though, because they are losing land, well, by the week, but more lives are being lost by the day.
Also from a political one. And so that's kind of where this thing is narrowed. And, we'll continue to search for ways to see if there's a solution to that unique problem that's acceptable to Ukraine and that Russia will also accept. And it may not work out, but we are going to do everything we can to see if we can find a deal. Like I said, there are days like last week where you felt we made some pretty substantial progress. But ultimately, we have to see a final resolution to this to feel that it's been worth the work. But we're going to keep trying. And our negotiators, Steve Woodcock, now Jared Kushner's involved, have dedicated a tremendous amount of time to this. And they'll have meetings again on Tuesday in regards to this.
What about a country with which you've had a long interest, Cuba? You mentioned it obliquely in the speech, talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. How long do you think the regime can last without oil?
I think the regime in Cuba's already, look, the revolution in Cuba ended a long time ago.
Now, I mean, Cuba did get a lifeline, so shout out to, I guess, Russia. I know the Cubans are shouting out the Russians right now because the Russians are the ones who sent Cuba an oil tanker. So they sent Cuba some barrels of oil to help them out with their oil crisis. So, I mean, hey, they can last a couple more months now because we cut them off from the Venezuelan oil. We got Mexico to cut them off from sending them oil. And shout out to Russia because they're the ones that sent them an oil tanker, which was like a couple of days ago.
And failure. Cuba's fundamental problem is that it has no economy, and its economic model is one that has never been tried and has never worked anywhere else in the world. Okay, it doesn't have a real economic policy. It doesn't have a real economy. Not to forget, put aside for a moment the fact that it has no freedom of expression, no democracy, anything, no respect for human rights. The fundamental problem Cuba has is it has no economy, and the people who are in charge of that country, in control of that country, they don't know how to improve the everyday life of their people without giving up power over sectors that they control. They want to control everything. They don't want the people of Cuba to control anything. So they don't know how to get themselves out of this. And to the extent that they've been offered opportunities to do it, they don't seem to be able to comprehend it or accept it in any ways. They would much rather be in charge of the country than allow it to prosper.
Is there any kind of off-ramp for the regime? I mean, previous ones, when you negotiated with Venezuela, you said if they agreed with various things, it would be possible to continue.
There is. I mean, look, I think you have to...
What could the Cuban regime do?
Well, I'm not going to tell you or announce this in an interview here, because obviously these things require space and time to do it in the right way. But I will say this, that it is important for the people of Cuba to have more freedom, not just political freedom.
I mean, if the Cuban people want to take notes from the Venezuelans, play nice right now. Play nice now. It doesn't seem like Trump has a hard on for the Cuban president than he did for Maduro, because Maduro, he was willing to extract. The Cuban president, he's not. Remember, we're not really saying that he got any charges. Nobody really calling this man a dictator. We're just saying that he has really close ties with narco terrorists, and that's a bad thing. And maybe some of our other enemies, probably some of our allies that we don't like. So that's pretty much the main gripe with Cuba. If they want to take notes from Venezuela, you might want to start bending the knee now and start promising to buy American oil in dollars. And don't try to ever cross us in any way, shape, or form, or you will lose, or the leadership will be removed. That's kind of the tone that we're setting. And if they want to take that example from Venezuela, they want to look over there and kind of see what can happen to them, which I would if I was Cuba. I'd probably start working on my bending the knee speech on how we're just going to go ahead and let America run through here and, do what they need to do. Now, if you disagree with that, I mean, I get it. But let's be honest here. If the leadership wants to stay intact without nobody getting kidnapped, they might want to start working on bending the knee to Trump.
Freedom, but economic freedom. The people of Cuba, and that's what this regime is not willing to give them, because they're afraid that if the people of Cuba can provide for themselves, they lose control over them, they lose power over them. So I think there has to be that opening, and it has to happen. And I think now Cuba's faced such a dire situation. Remember, this is a regime that has survived almost entirely on subsidies, first from the Soviet Union, then from Hugo Chavez, and now for the first time, it has no subsidies coming in from anyone. And the model's been laid bare. And it's not just like, look, multiple countries have gone in and helped. The problem is that you lose money in Cuba. They never pay their bills. They never end up paying. It never ends up working out. There were European countries that went to Cuba and made what they thought were investments in certain sectors, only to have the contracts canceled and get themselves kicked out. Because the Cuban regime has no fundamental understanding of what business and industry looks like, and the people are suffering as a result of it. So
I know they end up stealing the means of production. They're, I mean, the full-on socialists, I guess. Like, that's literally what they'll do. They'll come in, they'll set up the infrastructure, get these people to work, then the government comes in and take over the means of production and kick these guys out. It's like, I don't know, just what they do.
I think certainly their willingness to.
I mean, Maduro did it as well, so it's kind of something that's common, and honestly, it does hurt the people. This does hurt the people, because it's kind of funny how every time socialism is tried, I mean, the people are the one who end up decimated and poor. But you know, though, everybody in the government's rolling in dough for some crazy reason. But then there's liberals here who want that to go down for us. Okay, so you want us to all live in destitute poverty while what? Your favorite liberal politician is on the yacht? Okay.
Begin to make openings in this regard is one potential way forward. I would also say, and this has not been really talked about a lot, but the United States has been providing humanitarian assistance directly to the Cuban people via the Catholic Church. We did it after the hurricane. We actually just recently announced an increase in the amount we're willing to give, and that's something we're willing to continue to explore. But obviously, that's not a such long-term solution to the problems on the island.
One last thing. Iran, you've just sent a carrier, second carrier there. And President Trump has talked about a month to give people time. Are you running out of patience there?
Well, I'd say twofold. Number one is, I think it's pretty clear that Iran will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, that poses a threat, not just to the United States, to Europe, to world security, and to the region. There's no doubt about it. The second is, we obviously want to have forces in the region because Iran has shown the willingness and the capability to lash and strike out at the United States presence in the region. You know, we have bases because of our alliances in the region, and Iran has shown in the past that they're willing to attack us and or threaten our bases. So we have to have sufficient firepower in the region to ensure that they don't make a mistake and come after us and trigger something larger.
I mean, let's be honest, Rubio, though. Like, let's be real. We're kind of egging them on. And we've tried to work with these guys, and well, we keep moving the goalposts when it comes to Iran. Like I said, it went from being about their enriched uranium to about their missile defense system. And I mean, so what? They're just supposed to be defenseless while, like, remember, their adversary Israel is over there with all the missiles and the nukes that they could ever want, and they're just supposed to sit here with no capability to make nukes, which is absolutely fine by me, but also no capability to defend themselves with no missiles. And you thought, and they're just supposed to take that. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's completely unreasonable. Getting them to give up the enriched uranium, I'll always be for, but getting them to give up their missile defense system, I mean, it's going a bit too far. It would be nice, like, sure, it'd be nice if they concede to that, but it's a very small chance that they'll do so. And if we're willing to start a regional conflict over that, and that's on us, because they already drawn the red line, and if that's what we're going to go to war with them about, then let's be honest. Yeah, we're going to go to war with them because they don't want to give up their missiles, and because they don't want to give up their missiles, and we want to go to war with them over that, they're going to target our assets in the region. And it's up to you to decide who fault you want to, or who you want to place the blame on. Because in my personal opinion, it'd be us.
Beyond that, the president has said that his preference is to reach a deal with Iran. That's very hard to do, but he's going to try. And that's what we're trying to do right now. And, you know, Steve Witkoff and Jared have some meetings lined up fairly soon. We'll see if we can make any progress. The president would always prefer to end problems with a deal. He would always prefer that. So we're going to give it a chance here again and see if it works.
Marco Rubio, thank you very much for talking to Bloomberg.
Thank you.
I have been hearing good things. This came out about an hour ago that there might be some type of, economic deal going on. Wow, economic deal going on with Iran, pretty much trying to get Iran to stop sending oil to China, or well, not China, but trying to get China to stop buying oil from Iran. And I guess we're going to go ahead and replace that, replace China as Iran's customer. We can somehow work out some $500 billion deal with them. I've heard that get pushed down the pipeline of trying to, I guess, restabilize their economy if they work well with us. So we'll see. And they have said that, you know what, we might be wanting to get rid of our missiles if you lift the sanctions. So, you know, I'm not sure where that's going to go, but we'll see. It's a to be continued type of moment. But all right, though, let's go over to ALC and let's see what she's talking about.